Warm welcome, everyone. Great to see you all tuning in to this Lunch and Learn Chit Chat. My name is Asfa Shirazi. I'm Head of Technology for Customer Engagement at Westpac, a proud Ruby supporter and truly passionate about women building their financial confidence. Now, this community that we have built through Ruby events is going from strength to strength. And I thank you for your support and sharing your precious time with us today. Ruby is an online community for women where we continue conversations about issues that are close to our hearts, particularly about building financial confidence and creating the life that you desire. Now, whether you're actually starting your financial journey or actively investing or winding down to retirement, Ruby is an empowering place. Now, we are particularly excited today about this session as the focus is on building a positive money mindset with our amazing speakers on the call here, Denise and Talya. I'm really looking forward to the insights and really encouraging everybody on the call to share the takeaways that resonate with us today with our network of family, friends, and colleagues, and help us continue to strive for gender equity and really truly boost that confidence that women need from a financial perspective. Now, to kick off the discussion, I'm going to pass it back to the amazing Meggie Palmer of PepTalkHer. So let's start this chit chat, guys. Thanks, Meggie.
Thank you, Asifa. We so appreciate you. And a huge thank you to Westpac's Ruby Connection for hosting us today. I'm going to jump straight into it. Denise Duffield Thomas, you and I have known each other since COVID. Well, I've known you for a bit longer, but we met during COVID virtually when you very kindly ran some content for the PepTalkHer community. You are a money mindset guru. You are all about, manifesting money in your life. Give us a little bit of background about you and your journey to date.
Okay, so I was obsessed with personal development from a really young age. Like I started reading books about goal setting and the law of attraction in my teens. And I really struggled though in my 20s to actually get traction and make money. And I realized that you can be super positive, you can love affirmations, you can, do all of the things, but you still can have a massive fear around money. So what I decided to do a couple of years ago was to take everything that I'd learned from the personal development world and apply it to money. And even that felt funny because we still have this kind of collective story that money is something that has to be really serious, or it's something that we're not allowed to talk about, or that you might have stories about your beliefs, about even, math can totally make people fear money.
Right.
And I was terrible at math, by the way. And so I felt that there was a missing piece for us because everyone I know who's in business or in corporate career, they are so super smart. And everything that we want to do, we can learn. We can learn from a course or whatever, but there's always something there that holds us back. And so I deal specifically with the fear and stories that we have about money, because when you clear that, it's so much easier, because then it's just following a system, following a checklist. It's no big deal. But we have to let go of that fear if we want to have equality around money and we want to empower ourselves around money. So that's the conversation that I'm in, and I hope we've got some lucky bees. That's what I call my community. If you've got some lucky bees here, say hi in the chat.
Let us know in the chat. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your specific money mindset techniques today, Denise. And Talya, a huge welcome to you. Thank you so much. You come at mindset and financial success from a psychology perspective. Can you briefly introduce the community to you and a little bit about your professional background?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So lovely to be here, especially with Denise. I've been a fan for a long time. I come to this really with a passion around regulating the nervous system. As I was saying to the ladies before we started, as a clinical psychologist, I'm constantly thinking and obsessing about how do I get people moving forward, growing, healing, changing as fast as I possibly can. And, you're taught lots of things when you become a psychologist about how to do that. And you might have come across this as well if you've done any kind of work or coaching around busting limiting beliefs and committing to taking action and having a growth mindset. And I was applying all that stuff as a psychologist in my clinical work. And I noticed that people were still getting very stuck. And what started to make its way into the psychology world is this idea of polyvagal theory, which is all about the role that the nervous system plays in whether we're able to change, grow, move forward, transform. And I started to use the science of the nervous system in my work with my clinical clients, and noticed that once we regulated people back into the most evolved part of the nervous system and out of fight, flight, or freeze, the work that we were doing with them, whether it was around their beliefs or taking courageous action or holding really strong boundaries, it just started to flow much more easily, because we can change much more easily and grow and flourish when we're in the most evolved part of our nervous system. And then, because I love business, I started applying that to my business coaching clients, my mindset clients. And same again, they had all these fantastic business strategies and they were just getting stuck. And again, once the nervous system work was brought in and we were regulating them back into the highest brain, things just started to flow much more quickly for them.
So I think this is really interesting. And one thing I want to address off the bat, Denise, what would you say to people who say, well, you know, if you want financial success, you know, you need to invest and you just got to be rational about it. And this whole mindset thing is just a bit woo-woo. You know, and I want to acknowledge that that we are not financial advisors today, but we are having a conversation around your money and mindset. And you should, of course, consult experts. But I just want to talk about that and let us know in the chat, how do you feel about this conversation about mindset? Do you think it's legitimate? Do you think it's a bit out there and a bit too, you know, left of center for you? How does it make you feel? Let us know in the chat. But Denise, what would you say to people who kind of think it's just a little bit out there for them?
Well, I'm a skeptic as well. And I think that's why when I started learning about things like the law of attraction or even personal development, I was like, but what do you do? Like, I didn't understand what you actually then had to do, because it seemed like a lot of deservingness. If you're perfect in your thoughts and feelings, then good things will happen to you. And I thought I was screwed, to be honest, because I thought, well, how am I supposed to control those feelings and thoughts? So I like to come at it from a very practical point of view. And I'll give you an example. Everything that we have in our life, and wherever you're sitting, you can look around, there are things in your life that you have put up with, you know, and there will be meaning of the things in your life. So for example, underwear. I love how we can talk about these sort of things. Underwear, right? What is symbolic about your underwear? And it might be that it starts to bring up memories from the surface of going, well, I don't deserve to have nice underwear. You know, and so what I always get people to do is we start upgrading things in their life, because some things will be so symbolic to you and will bring up stuff. Like I went to buy a special beige bra for an event. And there are all these memories of childhood of going, you're only allowed to have one of everything. You're only allowed to have one black bra. You're only allowed to have one beige bra. And so that's something that you can do practically in the real world, but it will remind you of limitations and stories that you might have grown up with, that you're only allowed to have the minimum. And, you know, everyone can go upgrade things in their life, but the lesson and the awareness is what's going to be the most powerful thing.
So I want to just stick with this for a little bit. Are there any small, and then I want to come back to you, Talya, but Denise, are there any small things, like you've talked about underwear, what are some other small things that we can do to upgrade our office, or, you know, little clues or cues to give our mindset specifically around money and wealth and success for 2022? Any advice? Like I've heard one of my coaches told me to buy a really nice wallet. So every time you're getting money, you're like, oh, I have a fancy wallet. What do you think?
This is such a great question, because it really goes to what I teach, is that a first-class life is different for all of us. It's so different. And so I used to follow people and they'd say, you have to do this. And I think, so I ended up buying big, fancy high heels when I first started making money, because that's what I thought a first-class life would look like. And there's actually some lessons sometimes in learning your own discernment, because if you were told as a kid, you get what you get and you don't get upset, or you get what you're given, you actually have no idea what you would even like. So there's a couple of practical things you can do. One, when you go into a shop, see what you do. Do you look at the price tag before you even decide if you like it? When you're in a restaurant, do you look at the prices to decide what you feel like? That is a practice in discernment, because what makes you feel wealthy might be completely different for me. So what I actually get people to do at the start is, what makes you feel poor or inconvenienced? And you start with upgrading those things and give yourself a different standard. And that will bring up some stuff for you. It will absolutely rise things to the surface around your deservingness. And that's the stuff to clear, because then it's really hard to increase your prices, to ask for a salary increase, because you've got these worthiness issues that you have to deal with. And then once you deal with that, you can read a book about how to negotiate a salary, but you don't have all the things around, oh my God, I wasn't allowed to have that as a child. It lives within you.
Denise, thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. And a little exercise that I actually did in the same vein is actually writing down your salary and what in increasing that to a level where it feels really uncomfortable. And you could do the same with your high heels. You could do the same. What is that inflection point when you feel like, am I worth this? Have you done something similar to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually get people to rank everything in their life in my money boot camp. Is it economy class? Is it premium economy? Is it business? Is it first class? Because everyone kind of understands those distinctions. And, it will bring up panic for you sometimes in making a decision. And that's why I love that Talya is here too, because when we talk about that nervous system stuff, like, it's so hard to move forward in your life and business if you have these fears about money. And I would love to hear on this as well, because I always say to people, your first interaction with money was probably so scary because you went to put a coin in your mouth and everyone in the room screamed at you. And like, what does that do? And I would love to hear, Talya, what your techniques are to get rid of that, because we've all got that. We've all had that as a shared money experience where it's like, oh my God, money's so dirty and money's so disgusting. Oh my God, I'm in trouble.
Absolutely. Talya.
I actually never thought of it from that perspective, but that's so true. During the oral phase of child development, everything's in the mouth. And then if there's, don't do that with money, that is fascinating. I wonder what Freud would say. So I think Denise and I are talking about the same thing, but from very different angles. And it is fascinating to see how they intersect. So what's going on when we are trying to upgrade our lives and upgrade our finances is that we're actually met with a lot of triggers, right? Like Denise might, say to someone in Money Bootcamp, I imagine you might say, go and buy a nice pair of underwear, right? And that's actually a trigger for our nervous system. That can be a trigger for our nervous system. Or sit down and look at the debts that you still have to pay back and make a financial plan. That's a trigger for our nervous system. And our nervous system cannot tell the difference between buying new underwear and being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. In both of those cases, it can actually drop us out of social engagement mode, or what we call the unicorn brain, which is where you have all your best ideas and you can optimize all these juicy strategies Denise gives you, and you can go and buy the underwear and you can put them on and do a dance and you feel like the most you-iest you. The nervous system, if it detects a trigger, like buying new underwear, it can drop you out of that mode where you can problem solve and into a fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when we're stuck in those modes, it's very easy for us to get stuck in a negative mindset around money. In these modes, we think in black and white. We think safe or unsafe. Is buying underwear safe or unsafe? It's unsafe, don't do it. Blah, right? Saber-toothed tiger, don't do it. And we can't problem solve effectively because that's not what those part of the nervous system is about. That's the unicorn brain's part. And we can't envisage the future we want, because imagine drinking a pina colada on a beach when you feel on a nervous system level that there's a saber-toothed tiger in the bushes. We can't actually do that. We need to get back into the unicorn brain and be in the most evolved part of our nervous system so that we can learn that those previous threats, making a budget, increasing prices, buying new underwear, upgrading to first class, they're not saber-toothed tigers. They really are just things that are freaking your nervous system out, and we can learn how to regulate ourselves through them so we stay in the highest brain.
Talya, I love that idea of the unicorn brain. I'm definitely going to write that down on my post-it here. What some of the ways in which we can sort of catch ourselves out when we're falling into some of those traps? And so that we can, remind ourselves, hold on, we're falling into saber-toothed tiger zone and pull ourselves back to unicorn brain.
Yeah, exactly. And we call it a unicorn brain because you can't grow a unicorn business valued at $1 billion without a unicorn brain. And also unicorn brain's more fun than social engagement mode, isn't it? So let's think about that. So say, I love the buying underwear example because I think that is so obviously not a saber-toothed tiger, but can so easily trigger us into a nervous system state, right? So we think, all right, I'm going to go into Simone Perel and buy a beautiful pair of underwear for $49, right? The first thing we want to notice is how our nervous system reacts, because this is not something we are consciously aware of. It happens via a process called neuroception outside of our awareness, right? Which is often why we get stuck, because we don't even know it's happening. So the first thing we want to do is go, whoa, wow, I have just dropped into a flight mode around buying underwear. And so just noticing that is actually the first step to regulating the nervous system. And there's a strategy I love to use here called catch, contain, and thank, which is you catch the drop out of the unicorn brain, you contain it, so you don't just go around and around experiencing it, and you go, thank you, nervous system, for trying to save my life. As it turns out, a pair of underwear is not a saber-toothed tiger, but thank you for trying to save my life in this moment, because for your nervous system is not wise. It's not intelligent. It's reactive. It's trying to keep you alive. And thanking it can actually go some way to settling it down.
Beautiful. And Denise, do you have any hacks as well?
I love that our work is so intertwined in that way. And it's so validating actually to hear it from like a clinical point of view. So I love pattern interrupters and I love affirmations. So whenever you've found a trigger or you've, have awareness around an old story, I like to use an affirmation. It's safe for me to. And it could be, it's safe for me to look at my finances. It's safe for me to look at my debts. And I actually, I came up with that when I started my business, and I went to one of those free ATO meetings with an ATO guy. And before I went in, I was like having a panic attack, and I was so nervous and my palms were sweaty. And I realized that we have this collective story around the tax man. And if I sat down and thought, what are all the associations I have with the tax man? And I realized it was from movies and culture where, the sheriff of Nottingham would come around to your village to collect his tax revenue. And if you didn't have it, like you were thrown into jail or killed or whatever. And so I realized I was about to go into this meeting with this very nice normal tax man. And I felt like I was going to be thrown in jail. And so I had to, again, same thing, I had to comfort my nervous system to me. It's safe for me to look at money. It's safe for me to have these conversations around money. It's safe for me to pay tax, and that opened up everything for me. And I hear this so much from people. They're so terrified of paying tax that they keep themselves small financially because they don't want the eye of the tax man to notice them. And this puts us at such a huge disadvantage if we're terrified of paying taxes, because of course we won't be able to make money. So I love that. Mine is always, it's safe for me to, and I use it every single day, all day long. I do a pop-up in my calendar. I just do it as a recurring calendar, and it's always what I'm working on at that particular time. So you can just swap out that word whenever you want.
I think that's a really great call out to Denise, especially when there's been a few comments in the chat here around, we're living in quite a challenging world, especially for the last few years, and not everyone is feeling abundant, and lots of people getting hit with bills, and, they're never ending. It does seem like that. And so I think, it'd be great to understand some of those. I know you mentioned, those reminders and things. Is there anything else? Is there, I don't know, some meditation, some affirmations, or things that we can do, and perhaps even with our partners or those that we live with that are also impacted?
So I love a tool called emotional freedom technique. It's tapping, and it's got a lot of scientific backing behind it. I've actually seen people do it at Wimbledon. I've seen AFL players doing it in the state of origin. Is that the right ball analogy? I don't even know. But it's yeah. So it's called EFT, or Emotional Freedom Technique. There are a ton of free videos on YouTube about it. And it is such a great way to talk about out loud what you're scared about and just release that kind of fear from your body. I use it before I speak on stage. So I might say, you know, even though I have these nerves, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. It's also a really good thing to teach your kids, because if you think of all the money triggers that we have learned over years, it's been layers and layers and layers every single year. And that's what I do with my kids. I don't sit down and do finance seminars with them, but I teach them that emotional regulation, that if you're scared, if you feel fear, it's really normal, but there's something that you can do to kind of, you know, to let it go and to pattern interrupt, so it doesn't become a big problem. And I notice that when, you know, if they've had a bad day at school or something's happened, I remember those things happening to me, and they became a big groove in who I thought I was. And so it's just letting those things go. And tapping, I think, has absolutely changed my life. So if you're skeptical about it, just try it for yourself, because it's such an effective tool for anything, not just money, but anything where you feel fear or discomfort out of your comfort zone.
Totally agree, Denise. And I think it's about filling our toolkit with different options, isn't it? You know, some things will work really well for some, and others will feel more comfortable doing something different. And on that point, Talya, I'd love to come over to you and learn, you know, what are some of the other ways that we can regulate our nervous system and ultimately access some or unlock those success ideals that we all have for ourselves.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I just have to say it is uncanny to me how many times I speak to really successful people in business who seem to intuitively understand the crucial role of safety in business growth. It's just because safety is at the core of every single thing that we experience as a person. If we don't feel safe, we will drop out of the unicorn brain and drop out of connection with each other. Safety is the foundation of all kinds of growth, including business and trauma recovery and psychological. So I love that. Hearing you say that, Denise, is just so exciting. What can we do to regulate the nervous system? There's 3 steps. The first step is you have to know the state that your nervous system is in, right? And we could just even right now, even just for like 10 seconds, just quickly scan from your head to your feet and just notice, is there pumping energy? Is there a feeling of like, zzz? Is that at a 10? Or is that a bit lower? Or is it more heavy, slower energy, a bit sluggish? Is that kind of more you're sitting down at that 0-1 mark? If it's at that zzz, that's a hyperarousal, right? That's the nervous system in a sympathetic state. It's mobilized. It's like, oh, saber-toothed tiger around the corner, run or fight. If it's in this sluggish, slow, heavy energy, that's that parasympathetic energy. And that's a hypoarousal, too much. Nervous system regulation is about becoming aware of where you are. If the mind is racing and the body is racing, or if the mind is slow and the body is slow, or a mixture of the two, and what you need to do to come back to equilibrium. And so that's the first thing that we want to do. So if you want to pop in the comments where you are in your nervous system, if you can sort of notice, is it more of that flighty, jumpy, jittery energy, can't focus, but got to do things, right? Is it more of that fighty, irritable, frustrated, restless, snappy energy? Or is it more of that sluggish, heavy, what's the point? Nothing makes sense anyway, right? Where are you sitting in your nervous system? The second thing we want to do is about prevention. And this is about reducing the number of triggers that are dropping us out of the unicorn brain and into a fight, flight, or freeze mode. For women in business, this is almost always about learning how to set boundaries and have difficult conversations. It is one of the biggest challenges to our nervous system. And once we learn how to set beautiful, warm boundaries and have difficult conversations using easy scripts, that settles down a lot of the triggers. And the third thing around actually then getting out of fight or flight or freeze and into the unicorn brain, I'm giving you guys a crash course, we'll get to this last part because it's important, is knowing, do I need to upregulate? So come from the parasympathetic to a more regulated state, or down regulate, sympathetic to a more regulated state. I mean, we can do, there's heaps and heaps of strategies, but that's the core idea, the guiding principle. Do I need to go up? Do I need to come down? And then we just have to find the strategies that work for you. And I won't take up more time because I know we've almost got to finish, but that's it all in a nutshell.
Love that, Talya. And I think perhaps when we hang up today, guys, that might be what we can all do, is just sit and do a body scan and just see how that all feels. How do we feel after we get off this call? I'm buzzing, by the way. Hey, Denise, I'll come back over to you. I think there's some great questions coming through. We do have time for one or two extra, so please keep them coming. We've got amazing speakers here that we definitely want to tap into all your insights. But Denise, what would you suggest to someone who might have perhaps only started looking into their financial situation? They are sort of halfway through, in their 50s, for example, and they're starting to look at it now, perhaps for the first time, perhaps it's been overwhelming, but really, how do we start to set ourselves up to think about entering into the next stage of our life, whatever that might be? It might be children, it might be retiring, it could be whatever that looks like, but how do we kind of shift and unlock and access that potential that we all have?
Absolutely. So one of the first exercises that I get my clients to do is to write a list of money memories. So what do you remember about money? What was your financial situation that you were born into? What are some of the things that your family said about money? Because so much of it is the key to understanding, and I can see it sometimes generationally. Women who are in their 60s, for example, you have to go back and realize you were born into a time where you were told that girls don't talk about money, that it's impolite, that you are supposed to be a homemaker. And so to unlearn the conditioning, you have to go and see it. You have to go and look at it. One example that I just want to share as my last thing is I said that most of us have had a similar first interaction with money where it's like a jolt, but there's another one too. Almost every single birthday party that all of us have been to, and in movies and TV, the child has said, blow out your candle, make a wish, but don't tell anyone or it won't come true. And I find that just even that example means that we are so ingrained. We're not allowed to talk about money. We're not allowed to talk about our dreams. And that's one example of many of, a cultural thing that we all share, but you have to go and look at your flavor as well, because your fear around money might be related to a particular memory or a series of memories where someone said to you, you're not good with money. Money burns a hole in your pocket because you're a 5 and spend it on sweets. We have to unlearn that. We have to let it go. And then only then we can choose something different.
Thank you so much, Denise. I think that's a really another great tip that we can all take away and perhaps consider doing this weekend, and maybe think about whether that's a vision board perhaps, or Pinterest board, or whatever we might create.
And you could start with, it's safe for me to talk about my dreams.
Love that.
Before you do it.
Love that. Now, I'm really mindful of time, and I know we've just hit time here now, but Talya, I'd love to just end with you. Is there one tip, perhaps maybe we could think about doing that as well this weekend, or adding to our little list of fun things to consider for setting ourselves up in 2022?
Yes. So building on Denise's idea of it's safe for me too, there's a beautiful strategy in psychology called graded exposure, which is then rather than jumping into the ocean, we go into the wet sand. So if the thing is it's safe for me to sit down and do my taxes, right? Then we want to break that down into graded steps. It's safe for me to set aside an hour this week in my diary. Step 1, wet sand. It's safe for me to contact and send an email to my accountant and set up a time to talk. Step 2, right? So you're just building and building. The reason we like that is because it gives the nervous system a chance to learn that it's safe. It's like, oh, well, I put the thing in my diary and I didn't get eaten by a tiger. Well, I sent the email to my accountant and I didn't get eaten by a tiger. So this is why I love what Denise says about safety. We're constantly building this sense of safety using the graded exposure model. You don't have to do it all at once.
Love that. What a great point to end on. And just thank you so much, Denise and Talya, for sharing your beautiful, beautiful insights with us. We do have a shopping list of great things we can tackle and pop in our toolkit. So thank you so very much. Your lines to your Instagram pages and LinkedIn profiles are in the chat. Please shout out to everyone. Go and follow Denise and Talya and hear more about the wonderful work that they do. And thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We so appreciate it. Big shout out from Ruby and also to the team at PepTalkHer.